From 1953 to 1987, the public water supply at Camp Lejeune Marine Corps Base in North Carolina was contaminated with toxic chemicals. So for 34 years, more than 1 million soldiers and their families drank, bathed, and washed their clothes in contaminated water that's now causing them terrible, terrible health problems. Thousands of Marines and their families have suffered severe, debilitating illnesses and have died. There is strong scientific evidence that chronic exposure to the toxic chemicals at Camp Lejeune in the water has caused increased rates of cancer and has caused injuries to children in utero. A new federal law, the PACT Act of 2022, was just signed into law by President Biden. This new law provides sweeping benefits for veterans and will allow victims of Camp Lejeune water contamination to seek legal compensation. The act will permit people who lived or worked or were harmed as unborn children at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987 to file a toxic water lawsuit in U.S. Federal District Court in eastern North Carolina. Victims will have a 2-year window and deadline to file a claim, so time is ticking.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely, the lovely law firm.
Hey guys, it's Rainee Romero with the lovely law firm here for another Carolina Justice Report, and this one's a good one. We're talking all about female attorneys. Welcome back. So I am joined with attorneys Sharde Crawford, Sarah Austin, and Amy Lawrence, and we're excited about today's topic, right? Oh, something that doesn't get talked about all too often, right?
Yeah.
So first, you may not have seen this lovely face beside me. So this is Sharde Crawford. She is our newest member of the lovely law firm, but she's not new. She's been practicing law for over 10 years. Sharde, tell folks a little bit about where you're from, what you've been doing before coming on board with us.
I am from all over the South, but I say that I guess I got to claim South Carolina because I've been here since I was 12 years old. I've been practicing for 10 years now, and for 6 of those years, I was a public defender right here in Horry County.
Awesome. And now what are you doing with the law firm? What are you practicing?
I'll be doing personal injury as well as criminal law.
Okay. All right. And, I felt like today's topic was so kind of important because we have 3 female attorneys at the lovely law firm, and that's unusual, right?
Super unusual.
Mm-hmm. I mean, our females
it's
are
like
now
that by
higher
design.
than our males.
It's like that by design.
Yes.
Justin Lovely says that women are smarter, better
smart man.
multitaskers, they're better lawyers, all the above. He gets it.
Well, and what we have found is that people feel a little bit more comfortable with women. Do you agree with that?
I think so.
I think as far as clients
Clients
go, we've had some potential clients call and say they called us just because we have women attorneys and they want a woman lawyer.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure.
I think
I think
I think that they're also with other firms and other lawyers, they're used to being talked over, right? And used like all this legalese that people don't understand. And men love to do that, I think, more than women. And we use more plain language, and we have compassion and empathy.
It's the empathy.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's that.
Yeah.
The being able to sit down and put yourself in someone else's shoes, and really feel for a client, because we're seeing our clients at their lowest points when they're really hurting, and they want someone to listen. They want to know that someone cares,
right,
and that someone's going to give them the justice that they need.
Yeah. And of course, this isn't to bash the men out there, but it's very, I mean, I can only speak for myself. Everybody has kind of a different preference on when they're searching for a lawyer, what they're looking for. But I know for me, you really only see a lawyer once in your life, maybe more than that, if circumstances are unfortunate for you, but hopefully just once. You have some sort of catastrophic thing that happens. And when I'm looking for somebody, I want somebody who I feel comfortable with, that is approachable, that's going to kind of hold my hand, walk me through the process, break down what all these words mean, all this legal jargon, and that I also know is going to be tough on the court side, to where I know that they're going to fight for me, but they're also going to feel for me. They're also going to walk me through the process without making me feel like an idiot, like all of these things. And I think a lot of times females are very good at that, having the both sides of tough and soft, and holding the hands because of the empathy, kind of as you were saying. So I don't know. But let's give I know this is a very long answer of a question I'm about to ask, but give me a little bit of why you went into law. Sharde, I'll start with you.
Of course, you had to start.
Of course,
with
I'll
me.
start with you.
I always tell people from the time that I was a little girl, I've always been that person who wanted to fight for the underdog. I always chose friends in school who other people didn't want to be friends with. My mom always shares the story of there was a little girl in our neighborhood who had all of her fingers were like stubs. She had gotten a staph infection in her hands as a child, and so she had lost the tips of her fingers, and she was my best friend. And even though other individuals in the neighborhood would pick on her and not want to play with her and didn't want to invite her over, I was that one who always went and was like, no, girl, come on, let's go play Barbies. And do you have a Barbie doll house? Because I don't have one. But I think that as growing up, I always wanted to fight for the underdog. I thought that lawyers were phenomenal because they had these voices, and that when they spoke, people listened. And as a 4'11", but give me 1 inch and I can say I'm 5 feet, female, I wanted to be heard, and I wanted to be able to voice those things, to be a voice for the voiceless.
Right.
So that's kind of what inspired me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a common theme, right, with attorneys, is to help people. But I love you kind of giving that visual of helping the underdog in your neighborhood who people kind of shunned.
Oh yeah, no, but I'd also fight for my sisters and stuff. That was that person. But like Amy always says, I say helping people is my jam.
Sarah, what about you?
Piggybacking off that a little bit, I had some really good government classes in high school in Fort Collins, Colorado, where, my high school was set up kind of like a college, so I got to pick my classes. And I gravitated towards all the government classes, and I realized quickly that all the people behind, anytime something changed for the better, I realized it was a lawyer. Politicians are lawyers, judges are lawyers, and then there's the lawyers in the courtrooms actually making the change. So anytime the world got better, it was always lawyers behind that movement. And so I was like, I need to be a lawyer if I'm going to do anything meaningful, and be a part of any kind of change.
I love that. Amy?
I'm going to silence my phone because my 9-year-old working mom issues right here. So I became a lawyer because my mom was a guardian ad litem when I was a little girl in North Carolina. And she had kids who were abused and broken, and she fought for them tooth and nail. And she worked with these lawyers who were her attorney. Guardian ad litems had attorneys, and so she would go in and do home studies, stuff that essentially we see in DSS issues. And she was a volunteer. It's just that's where her heart was. And so I saw her fight tirelessly for children and for women who were victims of abuse and violence. And so, and my mom brought home every kid. We were foster home certified, so. It just felt like the one way I knew I can't go and do brain surgery on anybody. I can't deal with blood, right? But what I can do is I can help people in this other way and incite change in their life and in the system. And so, watching my mom do that is what kind of shaped me.
We don't play games with insurance companies. If you're hurt in a motorcycle crash, call us today.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely. The lovely law firm.
I want to read a couple of statistics about, female attorneys. And this is coming from ABA Journal, and it's for nationwide, so it's not just in our area. But it says that about 23% of equity partners in the U.S. Are women. And and this is from 2021, and even though women have made up at least 40% of law students for decades, there's still only 23% of the equity partners. Currently, women make up more than half of U.S. law students, but law firms aren't retaining them. And Law 360 reports that over the last 6 years, the proportion of female attorneys has increased from 34% to 37.7%, and 29.4% to 33% among non-equity partners, and then from 19.2% to 23.3% among equity partners. And minority female lawyers are also underrepresented at U.S. law schools. Women of color make up 20% of first-year law students, but they make up only 9% of all attorneys at U.S. law firms and about 3% of equity partners. So that just gives you a little bit of a visual on that. I mean, Sharde, with you being a minority, I mean, how has that kind of affected anything in your law journey? Have you kind of come against any kind of aversion to that?
Oh my goodness. Where would I even start? We don't have enough time for me to even address all of that. But when you talk about the statistics, and there being a larger percentage of African Americans who are entering into law school, but then there being such a small number. I remember when I was in law school, my legal research and writing professor, you're supposed to have blind grading. But she informed me that she could see through the marker and saw my name. And, you know, in our session with each other, she was trying to convince me to drop out of school.
What?
And she's sitting there.
White or color?
She was a white female.
Okay.
And she was trying to convince me to drop out of school and tell me, you know, I was a mother when I went to law school, and, you know, just go home and be a mom, you know. That's
Why? What was her reasoning?
She didn't really have, you know, great reasoning, but there was also another I say that to say there was another black female who was in the same section as me with the same legal research and writing teacher. And so whereas my personality was one of, girl, I don't give up. And, you know, I'm one of those people, if you tell me I can't do something, I like to prove you wrong.
Right. Double down.
And I love when someone underestimates me. I want you to, you know, so that I can come in and show you what I can do. But the other female also met with the same legal research and writing professor, and she told me that she had told her the same thing. But the sad part was that she actually dropped out of school.
Wow.
We keep in contact with each other over Facebook, but it's so sad that there is such a underrepresentation of African Americans in the legal field, as well as African American females. You know, in this county that we practice in, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of attorneys. But when you talk about African American lawyers, I don't even need all of our hands to count how many are here. You know, how many actually practice in this area. So,
and then break that down even further for female.
You know, so it's definitely that, you know,
we've thought through this, and it's like literally it all fits on one hand, and of those people on one hand, most of them don't even practice.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're going into the courtrooms, I am not immediately assumed that I am an attorney. It is oftentimes I'm believed to be the court reporter, or I'm someone's secretary, or I'm a paralegal, or even the defendant. It's never assumed, because they don't often see someone who looks like me, that I'm the attorney. And so that's one of those things where, you know, it's a bit problematic in my practice of, you know, here I am, a woman who is completely capable, who has passed the bar, who has studied, who is practicing, and yet when individuals see me, it is not, you know, assumed that I am of the likes of the other individuals who are walking into the courtroom to do the work just like I am.
How has that affected you? You know, do you thrive off that, or does that in some way, you know, make you self-conscious in any way, or make you feel
No, I tell you, it was a lot. It was very disheartening when I first started practicing. I tell people this all the time. When I first started practicing, I thought, you know what? I've arrived.
I did all the things.
I checked all the boxes. You know, I went to undergrad. I went and got an MBA. I went to law school. I didn't just do law school. I tried to excel. I graduated with honors. I got awards while I was there.
Wow, good for you.
And then I passed the bar when I was super broke the first time. And so because I did, all while being a mom. But I did this, and so I must be accepted, right? All of these doors are going to finally open for me. And they did not. Okay. I started practicing here in Horry County, and it was so sad. Amy, I don't know if I've ever told the story to Amy, so she might be hearing this for the first time. I say it to people all the time. But when I first started practicing, as a private attorney here, I go into court and you don't know where to sit. They don't teach you this in law school. They don't tell you where you need to sit. They don't tell you where to go. They don't tell you who to talk to. And so I go into Myrtle Beach Municipal and I sat where all of the defendants sit. I didn't know any better. Okay. I sat down and I waited because I assumed that someone would call attention to me when it was time for me to speak. And I went several times and no one ever said to me, you know, Miss Crawford, you're sitting in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, this is just really awkward. So one time I go to court and Amy comes in and she sees me sitting in the wrong spot. And she's like, what are you doing? What is your name?
I did not know Sharde.
You know, what is your name?
I knew she was very pretty.
And I
She
said,
looked
you know,
very
I'm
smart,
Sharde
and
Crawford.
she looked like a lawyer.
And she's like, aren't
too
you
dressed
Judge
Yeah.
Judge such and such's daughter? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, why are you sitting right here? And I was like, I'm waiting for them to call me. And she's like, this is not where lawyers sit. Come on over here, girl. Let me show you where the
that
lawyers
Louis Vuitton
sit.
bag over
Okay.
here.
And then she made one of the male attorneys get up, give me the seat, and said, you know, this is where you sit. And then introduced me to everybody there and brought me into the conversation. And it was on that day I was like, oh, I want to be her friend. You know, she just made me feel so welcome. And I don't know that she intentionally did that, you know, but here it is 10 years later and I still tell that story to people when they ask me, you know, why did I come and work here? Because you saw that and it probably was such a natural thing for you to just bring me into the fold. But here I was feeling so disheartened that I wanted to quit practicing law. And I remember, I won't say anymore. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
That's great.
But I had gone to a federal sentencing guidelines CLE, and I sat next to a female attorney who had been practicing in federal court for like 25 years, and she was crocheting next to me. And I expressed to her how disheartened I was, and she said to me, please don't give up. The law needs women. Federal court needs women. And she said, if you give the law 10, it will give you 20. And I didn't know what she meant by that. And I asked her and she clarified and she said, if you can just make it 10 years, I promise you your career is going to fly by and it's going to give you 20. But we need you. Please stay. And that meant a lot.
You're gonna make everybody cry before we can even talk,
I'm
Sharde.
sorry,
I got
guys.
goosebumps,
Sorry,
tearing
guys.
up. Amy, for heaven's sake, I won't ask her a question for another couple minutes. But thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's a personal question and it's your own personal journey. So I appreciate that because who knows who's watching, right? Who needs to hear that, right? You know, Sarah, I'll move to you and just ask, obviously it's a different perspective because you're not a woman of color, but you are a female. So have you kind of run into anything along your journey as a female that kind of has stood out to you?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky that when I started practicing law, it was with Amy. So I never had moments of Sharde being lost in court and sort of being looked over. I've had a few, but right when I started, Amy took me in and was like, this is Sarah. She's sitting here, you know, meet everybody. So I didn't have to feel that. And I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. But there's been plenty of times where I'm the court reporter. I've been mistaken for the defendant as well. Or the paralegal is most often. And I think that's because I look younger and I'm probably a lot younger than the other people in the room. And so
She's
that's
also the smartest.
that's challenging at times, but I've learned to sort of deal with it. And now there was recently an out-of-state attorney I was on the phone with, and I always get paralegal a little bit after they don't really like where I'm going with the conversation. They know we're going to start disagreeing, and so they're like, well, are you the paralegal? Who's the attorney? Like, you're trying to escalate it. And so now when I get, are you the paralegal? I just respond with, no, are you? And then the phone just goes silent. Why would I be the paralegal? I'm a man. And so that's sort of solved the problem. Now I just sort of make it as awkward as possible.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to go there,
I love that.
we're just going to sit
I'm
in it
gonna
for a
with you.
We're going to
Exactly.
sit in it for a moment and think about what we've done before we move on here.
That's the best. It's the best.
Yeah, so I'm
funny.
learning to have fun with it. But also I think I've only been practicing for 5 years. I think it's less than 5 years I've been practicing, but I've been with the lovely law firm 5 years, I think yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So
Congrats.
The congratulations goes to us.
Congrats.
As I
Everybody.
as
community
I get to
celebration.
as I get working on these cases more and more involved in the community, I think it's happening less and less, at least in Horry County, but it's still all over the place. It's in the courtroom all the time, and it's a lot of times it's clients or defendants, that we've named in the lawsuit that are looking down at me like, who is this little girl that's asking all these questions? And I'm
The one
like,
that's going to take all your money and stick you in the box where you need to be.
yeah, I'm happy to ask them.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
like Sharde, like, please underestimate me,
Yes.
and just and look over me and ignore me because all this is on the record.
Yeah,
I'm coming back
you
to
about to
it.
go down. Well, Amy, I mean, I'm sure you have a little bit of a different perspective because both of these ladies have been helped by you. Did you have somebody to help you, or have you run into things? I know Sharde was talking about being the short little thing, and of course, you can relate to that. You're like,
I got 1 inch on her.
you tend to call yourself kind of like, the bulldog that comes in, kind of underestimated as well. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you've gone through.
I remember when I first started practicing law, Justin and I were at a wedding. For those of you who don't know, Justin's my husband. Some people don't, new to this game, don't realize that we're married. And we are equal partners in the lovely law firm, 50-50, which is very surprising that when I meet other husbands and wives, the husband always wants 51%. That was never even a question. Justin just filled it all out. Like,
Yeah.
wow. He is a keeper. But I remember we were at this wedding, and I just started practicing law, and I was pregnant, and there was this older man there, and we were in Tennessee, in Nashville, and he said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm an attorney. I'm a lawyer." And he said, "A lady lawyer." Like it was like the craziest thing he'd ever heard. I was like, "Yeah, they let us vote and everything. Can you believe it?" Like, but I bet he said "lady lawyer" 30 times. A real life lady lawyer. I was like, yeah, we're like on the Supreme Court and everything. Remember, I got a cashmere sweater made, or not the sweater made, but I got it embroidered, and it says lady lawyer, like right here on the corner, because that made me giggle so much. I didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I knew what that felt like. And I remember, so my mom, we talked about my mom being a guardian ad litem, but that was a volunteer job. She was the CFO of a very, very large corporation. And she used to tell me, "Amy, it's a man's world." And that made me so mad. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. Because she and my dad made me feel like I could be the president of the United States if I wanted to be. And I still believe that. If I really want to be president of the United States, I could be. I had parents that empowered me in that way. But my mom would tell me as I got older, it's a man's world, it's a man's world. And she would tell me these stories about, like, other presidents of company would come in and they wouldn't negotiate with her on things because
They want to talk to the man.
she had a vagina. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. Like, I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. And then I became a lawyer. And reality and life smacked me in the face. And, I worked for a guy who told sexual jokes every day and, did and said things that weren't appropriate or just plain wrong. And I realized that's what I had a judge, after I'd had a baby, I'd still on maternity leave. I'd had a baby 20 days prior, make me come to court. I was cut from hip to hip. Had an emergency C-section. I had milk leaking from my breast and told me to get my ass to court. And when I got there, he yelled at me for not wearing a jacket. And it wasn't out of disrespect. It's because I couldn't fit in one that I owned, And so I have had all these moments. I never want anybody else to feel like that again,
Yeah.
And Justin watched me go through those things, and he can't go beat up everybody, Even when he wants to, he can't go beat up everybody, and so he's watched me, and so, like, he doesn't want any other woman to ever feel like that either.
Well, and I do want to give props, to Justin because he embraces female attorneys and always says positive things, complimentary things, respectful things, listens to our female clients, with the empathy that you ladies would give them as well. And so that's unusual, and I'm grateful that that's
It's so
part
like,
of the lovely law
I had
firm.
someone say, an owner of a company like, oh, that's just how men talk. And I said, my husband doesn't talk like that.
No, he definitely
He's never made anybody, never made a comment, sexual or otherwise, that made any woman in our office feel uncomfortable, and that he would not say in front of his own mother or his own grandmother. So no, that's not how men talk. That's how some men talk.
That's right.
But that's not how they're supposed to talk.
And also, it is awesome that Amy's a partner, because there's nothing like more empowering than, there are situations where you're like, I do have to call my boss. And it's like, I'm calling my boss. And then it's like, Amy gets on the phone.
Like, oh no, you go, you do that, you go fix that.
You expected.
Here she is. Well, here's a great example of the lovely law firm. Okay, so it's 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock, got the babies in bed. I'm scrolling Instagram, and Sharde had just started with us. She'd been with us, a week? And her baby, how old is Angel?
She's 4 months.
Okay, so she was for her 4-month shots, 3-month shots. So she had to have her shots, and she is FaceTiming while with her and her husband. Dennis is very capable and all those things, but I'm seeing this screenshot of her like FaceTiming the doctor and her baby who is having to get its shots. And the next morning I said, why did you not go to that doctor's appointment? Are you kidding me? No offense to daddies, but you cannot be trusted with shots and doctors. And she's like, well, I just started. And I was like, no. Let me just tell you something. It is a requirement of this job. You will be fired if you do not go to your baby shots. Like, we do not miss those moments. And that's just how we feel. Like, I mean, a big part of our office is breastfeeding. And we have a place for you guys to do that and feel comfortable. And it's really nice to have another woman in the office that understands.
Yes.
Well, thank you, ladies, for chatting about this. I feel like this is such a needed topic to talk about, and you each have such unique perspectives of your own journey at different times, and I think that's really cool too. So again, this is not to bash any male attorneys or anything. There are some great ones that we know and love, of course,
Amazing ones.
but this is more to share their journey and also encourage other female attorneys. So thank you so much again for watching the Carolina Justice Report. We release new episodes every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Be sure to go back and watch some of our previous one where we kind of touch on some of these subjects, as well as some hot news topics in the news. And you can find us anywhere that you consume your media. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course, online at justiceslovely.com. We're everywhere you can find us. So thanks so much for watching today.
It's ugly, justice is lovely, the lovely law firm.
Were you stationed at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987? You might have legal rights to pursue money compensation damages. For the thousands of U.S. veterans and their family members who lived on base at the United States Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina between 1953 and 1987, they might have been exposed to serious health risks. Marine Corps service members and their loved ones who lived on base drank water containing toxins and use it to bathe, clean, and cook. Since that time, many exposed veterans and their family members have developed serious health problems believed to be related to their time at Camp Lejeune. This is including several forms of cancer. Even though the service members' cancer and other health conditions have been linked to the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987, many have had their claims for benefits denied by the United States Veterans Administration. Military personnel and their family members who have been diagnosed with cancer after serving at Camp Lejeune may be able to seek compensation. The lovely law firm Injury Lawyers has the reputation and the resources to help you with your Camp Lejeune claim. Be sure to watch all of our videos.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely, the lovely